Like 99% of paranormal stories, videos, things like that you encounter is probably fake. Mm-hmm. Even if 1% is real, that's a lot of people.
It's Sophia Franklin. You are listening to Sophia with an F, and the F is for phenomenal.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sophia Franklin. If you haven't subscribed, I was about to say the F word. Please subscribe. I don't want to get demonetized. I'm recording from WTF Media Studios in New York, and I am here with the host of the Otherworld Podcast, a paranormal podcast, Jack Wagner. How are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
I feel so blessed and honored that I get to have you on the week of Halloween.
Dude, I know. Right in time. This is... it's a day before.
I know, a day before Halloween.
Right down to the wire.
Right. You're probably like, bitch, this is like, you should absolutely feel honored. Because you probably have
It's true.
so
This
much...
is my busy season now. Now. This is my life now. I wasn't before, of course.
What? What do you mean?
Like, paranormal.
Okay, right.
This is like new to me.
Right, which is so interesting. I was like looking at your background, and first of all, this is a very kind of unlikely match. My show, I usually have not randoms on. I'm calling my guests randoms.
It is kind of random. I was scrolling.
Yes. Random people, like influential people, which you are, but
Thank you.
They're usually talking about not supernatural
Yeah, for sure.
stuff, which you used to not talk about.
Yeah. No, I hosted, I guess my background was like comedy, and I'm a director, so I was doing all sorts of weird stuff on the internet, like strange like stunts a long time ago. I had a show called Like and Subscribe, and then I hosted this podcast called Yeah But Still. And then
Which is a hilarious name, by the way.
It is a good name. I really like that name. But yeah, we would just kind of interview people and goof around similar to this. And but then it just sort of like
segued into...
Yeah, well, I started one Halloween. My friend Lindsay had like a really funny ghost story, and I think I just wanted to put it on the podcast, but I was like, I can't just like put out one single ghost story, so I wanted more. So I did like a tweet asking if anybody had one, and I really thought I would get like one or two people, and I thought they would be bad, but my inbox got like straight up flooded with submissions, and I was immediately like reading them, and they were crazy. Like they were like, people were telling me about years of their life.
You're like,
it was like way more than I thought.
So what was the tweet? Like, just tell me about...
I was just like, have you, does anybody have, I think I asked, has anybody experienced something paranormal and wants to tell me about it? And it got like 30 likes. But I got like way more submissions than that.
I thought you were saying it was a lot of likes for a second.
No, it was not. That was the thing. It was like not, it's not like it went viral or anything. So the stuff I was reading off of just a small group of people made me realize like, I think there's more people out there who have experienced strange things that just don't talk about it. So that was kind of why I started the show.
I think true crime, which is obviously a different genre, but true crime, and I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of supernatural, paranormal types of podcasts out there, but it's usually people who are like our experts talking about it. And you told me before we started recording, you're like, I don't claim to be an expert on this.
No, I don't even think there's such a thing.
Oh, you don't think paranormal shit is real?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know if there's an expert, right? Like, because I don't really weigh. I make a point of not really weighing in myself on the show. Part of that is I just think it makes it a better show to let the people talk for themselves. But even if I was, like, I'm not, for me to come in, like, I always feel like it'd be weird for me to come in at the end and be like, what they were experiencing was a banshee. It was a fairy. You know, it's like, I'm not saying...
You're not saying
if that
it's
stuff
not
is real, nobody knows anything about this, even if you believe it's real. I certainly don't. So like, I'm not going to sit there like,
yeah, which
I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right?
Yeah.
So.
Which I really respect, because I think if you're even like watching a show like Ghostbusters, which don't ask me why I'm bringing up that show, it's just always the first thing on my TV.
Do you mean Ghost Adventures or
no?
Is there a show Ghostbusters? I mean, look.
Excuse me. There's a very well-known film called Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. Ghost Hunters.
There's like a million Travel Channel shows about this shit. So.
Yeah. But I will end up watching it, and they talk about it like it's so matter of fact, and they have the machines, and they're like, we picked up this, you know, and it just makes it feel forced, and it makes you I don't know, a little turned off to
probably
it.
A lot of it's fake.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
I mean, which mine is not. And it would be way easier to fake. I kind of wish I did host a fake show, but I say that Otherworld is nonfiction, and I try my hardest to make it to like follow those same rules, you know? So
yeah,
it's that was kind of my thing from the beginning, is like just trying to suss out people that like really, really witnessed something that like I could not explain myself. Mm-hmm. And I would try to find an explanation, but most of these, like, there's just no way.
Do you have to kind of filter these stories? Like, has there ever been someone who submitted a story that you're like, this person is just trying to get on the show?
Oh, for sure. But
you can kind of tell. You can tell if someone's writing like a 7-page thesis paper on their experience. You can tell when it's authentic.
Like, it's very obvious when you're talking to somebody who like actually experienced something that they can't explain, especially if it's scary. Mm-hmm. Because like a lot of the times it's really traumatic. So it's obvious, and it's obvious when they're lying.
Yes.
I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people in the past. You kind of eventually learn when somebody's bullshitting you.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, I can tell when people are bullshitting me when I'm interviewing them, you know?
Yeah.
If they're like telling a story.
How am I did I seem like I'm bullshitting?
No, you absolutely do not
good.
seem like you're bullshitting.
But no, I mean, and look, like, not to go on and on about like the process, but I'm like, you know, most shows, it'll be like a person telling like a campfire style story, and it'll just end like, ooh, like, we don't know. Mm-hmm. But what I do on the show is like, usually after they're done, I'm like, okay, I need your mom's phone number. I need like everybody's phone number that you know. Like, I want to find out more. I'm going to like be digging into this a bit. And so if they were lying, it's going to be like,
right,
not super easy for them.
Yes.
And and ones that are pretty far out there, I'll usually try to talk to some people that are close to them, and even just like sort of give them the space to warn me if they're like, hey, I don't know if you should be listening to everything Johnny is saying right now, you know?
Totally. You're like, you're going on the record, by the way.
I've had people sign a contract saying they are not deceiving me before.
Okay.
A couple times.
Damn. I like that.
Yeah.
I listened to a few episodes, and you really give people just the floor to tell their story. You don't really come in and tell them like, oh, this is what happened. You just really like let them tell their story.
Yeah.
Authentically. And I found that very interesting about your shows. You don't really intervene too much.
No, for sure. I mean, I edit myself out a lot. Like, I am talking in there for sure. But
why is that?
Oh, I mean, I'll just like ask them clarifying questions and stuff. But I mean, the real answer is that I like the stories a lot myself. And when I started the show, I was like, a lot more people will like the stories than they will like me, you know?
I should take a note out of that book, actually, because
I don't know if that's the case. Like, I've been told, you know, but I think like it's what's cool about this is that like a really wide range of people end up listening to this, and like people that I didn't even suspect would end up listening to my show. I'm always surprised that people talk about like, oh, me and my grandma listened to it together. It's like very funny to me, coming from a show where I like just goofed around with my friend.
Well, and Otherworld is a huge show. Like, it took off tremendously. Were you expecting that to happen? No. You didn't think it was going to become as big as it did? I was doing 5 episodes of the show. So like, I haven't listened back in a while, but like, I'm sure in the first few episodes, I'm saying things that imply that it's going to end, right,
you know?
Right.
And basically, I mean, it was kind of funny. Like so it started to take off pretty quick. I was going to do 6 episodes, and then I was like, man, this is being received really well. Like, better than most things I've made before. Because I've made a lot of like random shit in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, this is doing good. I should like see this through. And then this Washington Post profile came out about the show. And then that kind of set things off. Literally that morning, I had like the agents from the various agencies suddenly like texting me. I was all of a sudden meeting with them, and like in the meeting with like the agent that I ended up signing to, I was like, well, I was thinking about doing this as like a seasonal thing that I'll probably make a couple more than stop. And he was like, no, you're fucking not. And I was like, what? He's like, absolutely not. You're not stopping.
Oh, and I like thank God
I was
for
waiting
that
for him to
agent.
laugh. I thought he was like goofing with me. He's like, no. And I'm like, it's a lot of work. He's like, you'll figure it out. And so I kept going, and like it's been a year. So
are you still with that agent?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank God for him.
Yeah,
because I mean the show is just huge. Have you ever received a story? Because this is my question. If I watch a scary movie in the morning, don't ask me why I'm watching it in the morning. Let's just say I am. The rest of the day, I walk around creeped the fuck out, right?
Dude, this is a funny question.
Like you have to be constantly spooked and scared.
Not at all.
You're not.
It's weird. Like I used to get more scared before, and that's part of the reason I didn't want to do it all the time is because I was like, this is going to take a toll on me to be constantly interacting with stuff like this and thinking about talking to people about demons and stuff. Like I'm going to be going crazy. What's funny is that like, I think it's just a lot of work. And when I'm finally done, it's like the last thing I want to think about. So I've just like, I walk around my house in total darkness, like completely chill in a way that I wasn't before. Where it's like, I think it's a mix of like
exposure therapy,
like just knowing my house isn't haunted. Like, you know, when you're a little kid, maybe this is not the case, but like when I was a little kid, I used to think that there was like there might be a shark in the pool. You know, I think like a person that actually works with sharks every day wouldn't have a stupid fear like that because they'd be like, oh yeah, sharks don't live in a pool. Like sharks aren't in this lake.
Yes.
Like why would they?
Totally.
So that's kind of how I am with my house. It's like, yeah, I don't live in a haunted house. They live in a haunted house. And also, even if I did witness something, I think like I'm just too tired now that I think I would just ignore it. It would be like if your manager showed up at your house at like midnight and you see him on the ring cam like knocking, you're like, dude, I'm not.
Yeah. No way. And actually anyone knocking.
What are you doing here? Leave me alone.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's work now. So it becomes.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. It almost feels like you have an armor now. Do you kind of feel like, I know how this goes. I've talked to all these people and I'm kind of like, I'm ready for a haunted encounter if it happens.
No way. Not even, no way.
Okay.
Because there have been a couple times I gotten scared.
Okay. Like before the show or after the show?
During. One or two.
Okay.
But for me, it's important. I try to like stay in the middle at all times. Otherwise, I think if you cross too far one way or the other, it could be like really dangerous, if that makes sense. Especially if you're crossing into like full on belief and then you get let down by something. It could be like a roller coaster. So I kind of just try to stay open-minded, you know. Your
investigative journalism. Like you really try to stay unbiased.
Yeah. But the series we're doing right now was the only one that scared me. And it was just because like, it's about this family that moved into a very haunted house.
I'm already freaking out.
Yeah, so I'll tell funny ones after this, but so this couple.
I want to hear the scary.
This couple, they're a funny, like odd pair from Canada, and they find like this house that's an insane deal. It's like 6 bedrooms and it's really cheap. And it's in this Orthodox Jewish neighborhood, which is kind of strange because they're not Orthodox. Only one of them is Jewish. They move in. Some weird stuff starts happening. The husband is a contractor, so he's like, he knows all about, you know, everything related to a home, and like the basement floods like in the first day, and like him and his friends check it out, like they scope the pipes and everything, and there's like no reason it would have flooded. There was no rain, like it just out of nowhere, like all the drains are shooting water out of them. The alarm's going off even when he's like disconnects it from power and the backup battery.
Oh,
like strange things are starting to go down. And then at a certain point, like this old dude that lives across the street from them, this Orthodox guy, invites them over for dinner, like this formal like Jewish dinner. And they like go over there, have this sit down. He like calls the husband into the other room, like to have some man-to-man talk. And the guy, the neighbor, basically asks him like, is everything okay with that house? Like is anything going on?
The neighbor asked that?
Yeah. And he's like, well, some weird stuff has been happening. And he's like, that doesn't surprise me. It's been sitting empty for 8 years. And he's like, in our belief, if a dwelling sits empty for that long, it's susceptible to be inhabited by like malevolent spirits, basically. So it starts there. It gets so much worse, especially like after her brother comes over and does a seance.
Stop.
Yeah, it starts to get really bad. So, and they bring in all sorts of people to help it, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Can you tell me like one of the bad experiences that happened? I mean, the water like
she starts to get possessed.
So it gets
they think
crazy.
Yeah, it gets kind of nutty. But like one thing, well, I don't want to spoil the ending. No,
you don't have to spoil the ending. But just one thing that happened.
There's a lot of witnesses with this one, which is like freaked me out. And like talking to them, and I think this the times that I'll get scared is when I'm like talking to them like not on the podcast, you know?
Yes.
Like I'll never forget. This was like a month into making it. I heard this story, and it was immediately I was like, oh, I'm in over my head with this one. So I interviewed the wife, and she's like, my husband Cameron will never talk to you. He's like terrified of this. He won't even let me talk about it in the house. Like she had to go to her mom's house to talk about it, and she would only call me like out. Like when she's out on errands, she's like, Cameron didn't even want her to do the show. He got too drunk at a party and embarrassed himself. And she was like, okay, you have to let me do the podcast.
I love that. I love that. You did this. I gotta do this.
So anyway, like this guy like would not talk to me. I hear this whole story from her. I'm like, hey, just give him my phone number in case he wants to like call and vibe me out or whatever. Mm-hmm. And by this point, it's like way too late. It's like 10:30. And I had started interviewing her at like 5. And so I'm just like, fuck. Like, I need to go.
So you guys have been talking for hours and hours and hours.
So like I'm ready to go to bed or whatever. And then like my phone rings and it's this Canadian number. And like I answer and it's her husband. And he's just like breathing. And like I don't even, in my memory, he probably did say hi, but in my mind, like in my memory, I think he just said in this like thick Canadian accent, like, you sure you want to know about this? And like starts like dumping on me. Like he just starts telling me so much just on the phone. And he was like in his garage, like drinking, I think. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of listening to him. Like I could tell it was like a guy who like wanted to talk about
this.
This.
It was like therapeutic.
Like he was getting off his chest, and he told me about something that ends up, it's in like the last part of the episode, something that he has like been trying to forget, basically. And it was like, for me, that was the only time I got really scared, because it was like, you know, he's like this tough construction worker,
right?
And he's like, we weren't on the show. He's like literally calling me and like trauma dumping on me about this, and it was just a lot. I was freaked out. So anyway, I went to this bar right after
and got hammered.
I drank 3 Negronis like really fast.
Yeah. No,
I mean, that's not like that aggressive, but it was, I like sucked him down for it was like, I don't really drink that much, so
3 Negronis is crazy for you.
Well, to be like doing it, you're not supposed to drink like that. You're supposed to drink when you're happy, you know?
Right. Well,
to go specifically to be like, I need this in order to fall asleep.
Yes. You're like, I need to black myself out.
Yeah.
To be able to go to bed.
Yeah. So
that
wouldn't freaked me out.
I can tell.
Like 99% of paranormal stories, videos, things like that you encounter is probably fake. Mm-hmm. Or like somebody getting it wrong, right? Yeah. Or like they're just scaring themselves. But even if 1% is real, that's a lot of people.
That's
a lot of people, right?
Uh-huh.
And people have all sorts of ways to explain stuff away. You know,
there are some things that are just not explainable.
For sure. And I think the people who really do experience real things, the last thing they want to do is go on some Travel Channel show and talk about it.
Right.
And have like ridiculous music laid over it and be like, you know, that's like with anything, right? You rarely hear from the person it actually happened to. Or it's like the same 5 people that they keep carting out for every show.
Right. So you don't want, if you're having an experience like that, I think people, you know, don't always realize like it's traumatic.
Yeah.
And you don't really want a team of people coming over, filming you, have these machines out.
Reliving the worst day of your life.
Right.
Or like, yeah. So that's kind of what I started the show thinking that. I was like, people who actually live this don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Like because when it happens to you, the first thing you want to do is move on and forget. Like that's what people don't realize. I haven't had much happen to me, but even like the small tastes of things that I've had, instantly I was like, absolutely not. Like,
yeah,
you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
you just want to move on because it opens up too many questions, right?
Right. And it's a traumatic experience, which you probably have searched for answers and they're not there, which just makes it worse. So you like want to like move on from it and just.
Yeah. So my idea was to make something that like I would listen to, and something where like, hopefully if I did a good job, more people would come out of the woodwork, and they did. Like that story was one of them. Another one was like, I mean, this is a freaking tangent. I'm not going to go down it, but very early on, I got an email from this girl named Eilish Poe who emailed me, and she said, "Hey, I've been offered TV shows and turned them down, and I've never talked to anybody about what happened to me." Damn. She's like, "You could just Google me to see if you want, but I'd be willing to talk to you if you want." And like, I looked it up, and she some guy she dated hid in her basement for 2 days, and then jumped out and stabbed her 16 times, and she survived.
Oh my God.
So that's already crazy enough, but like the way she survived has paranormal elements, and deals with stuff now because she kind of like touched death, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
So anyway, like I got to know her. That was a crazy series because it was really interesting to talk to her because she has like really hates true crime.
Okay. Because she thinks it glamorizes and.
Oh yeah, I mean it was really illuminating speaking to her, and I just tried to do the best I could to like help her tell her story the way she wanted. But what really stuck with me is like saying that, you know, being in the hospital and like recovering from her stab wound still, and like having to report TikTok videos of people being like, you know, talking about her story and like sympathizing with the ex-boyfriend, be like, "Oh, that's kind of cute."
Oh my
like,
God.
You know?
Yeah.
And articles coming out insinuating that they talked to her.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. And talking about how her and her friends like still have to, you know, occasionally search and like find these like, it's always small true crime pods, you know.
What? That do what?
That are like doing her story. And kind of like riffing on it. Like that's the weirder thing where it's like riffing on like a stranger's murder, talking about her as if she died, like in the past tense. That really bothers her. And yeah, and just kind of treating somebody's worst day as entertainment, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
Which I mean, I guess like in a way I'm doing that too, but at least it's with her. It's with her.
Right.
You know?
She reached out to you for a reason because she felt like her story could be told in an honorable way.
Yeah, but it was crazy talking to her. We've become good friends, and like that was nuts. Like this was like one of the most surreal conversations I've ever had in my life.
I can't imagine.
Like, you don't get to hear, like she died pretty much.
Yeah.
So like I told her, I was like, it's weird to call you like a attempted murder survivor. I'm like, I feel like you got murdered. Like,
yeah.
Because she did, like, she experienced death and like came back. If you listen to the full thing, like, I don't want to spoil it, but
she was stabbed how many times?
16.
As always, I am looking out for my sleuths, and today I have something very special. I want to introduce you guys to Mango. Not the fruit, but a new erectile dysfunction pill that is game changing. And I know I've said dysfunction in the past, and I'm saying it now, but I don't think of it as a dysfunction. I'd like to think of it as better function. It may not be something your man needs, but I promise you it is something you're gonna want him to have. I tried it for myself, and remember that Ariana Grande song where she talked about only being able to walk from side to side after a night with her man? That was me because of Mango. Mango dissolves rapidly, has a tasty mango flavor, and starts working in as little as 10 minutes. So there's no awkwardness waiting for it to happen. Mango's proprietary formula combines the active ingredients in Cialis and Viagra with oxytocin, also known as the love hormone, and an amino acid that helps increase blood flow to all the right places. Mango's mission is to make America hard again, and has great merch at makeamericaHardAgain.com, which is something I can definitely get behind. or in front of, or under, or on top of. You get the point. Buying Mango is easy. Just go to mangorx.com, complete a short and secure telemedicine visit, and Mango can be shipped discreetly straight to your door. The telemedicine visit is over in literally a matter of minutes. Be sure to use code SOFIA20 to save 20% off your first order. Have your man get this today. You are gonna love it.
So she was like laying there. She was laying there like bleeding out. She ended up playing dead to get him to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And Eilish, if you're listening, sorry, I'm talking about you. But
I mean, if we need to edit this, we
no,
can. Whatever
she's
you
fine.
need.
She's
okay.
Cool. Yeah, she was laying there and trying to find her phone to call 911. Another crazy part is that she was trying to use Alexa while she was getting stabbed.
Oh my
And she was like,
God.
Alexa, call 911. And Alexa's like, I can't do that. I do not have permission to make phone calls, or whatever. Like, then she was trying, like, hearing her walk me through what was going on in her head was wild. Like, mid-stab, she's doing this. And then so she's like, Alexa, call, I forget her roommate's name, Megan. Call Megan's mom, because it's Megan's Alexa. And it's like, there is no contact called Megan's mom. And she's like, okay, Megan wouldn't save it as Megan's mom. And then so she's like, call like the name, the mom's name, call mom, like all these things. It wasn't working. Meanwhile, this is like while she's getting.
Oh my God.
I know. So like, you never get to hear things like that from people, right? So anyway, so she plays dead, gets him to leave. And then she's laying there awake and she's trying to find her phone and can't. There's no pockets, right? So she's like, where's my phone? And she's looking and like can't find it. She's bleeding out and like can barely move.
And is the boyfriend still there at this point?
He's ex-boyfriend, by the way.
Ex-boyfriend.
Oh, and by the way, like not a serious relationship. It was a guy that she went on Bumble dates with like 3 months in the past and like had forgotten about. It was like something that didn't work out.
Oh my fucking God.
So that's like another thing about the true crime stuff is that like it was always being painted as like this like wronged ex-lover that.
Right.
I mean, not that it makes it any better. Like there's nothing that justifies that, but like it was a person where it's like, I mean, I'm sure you and everybody's dated somebody where you're just like, you give it a go, but then you're like, oh, this is not.
And forget about them. And you forget about it.
Okay. Yeah. Time to move on. Like, and she did.
And he came back months later.
Months later, she starts getting these texts that day where he's like blowing up her phone. And she's seeing like he's talking about getting back with her and stuff. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, she's like teaching her class and she's like, hey, like, leave me alone. Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, good luck. But yeah, there's no like, why are you texting me kind of thing? Like,
right.
Meanwhile, he's in her basement at the time.
That makes me sick. Like, that is horrifying.
I know. And so anyway, so she was trying to find her phone, and then all of a sudden she sees, I cannot tell the entire story, but all of a sudden her grandma Jeannie is standing in her doorway, like full, and grandma Jeannie has passed away. Grandma Jeannie's not alive, but everything's so surreal that she's like, she's like, what's grandma Jeannie doing here? And she's just like staring at her. She's standing in the doorway, and like, I think she just kind of stares at her and just like looks for a second, and then all of a sudden like she fades out, and then like another person appears, and it's her friend who committed suicide like a few years ago.
Wow.
And then that person fades out, and then the third person appears, and they're not ghosts, they're like fully formed humans standing in the doorway. She's like,
wow,
very adamant about that. And the third person does not look friendly. It's this girl she knew in middle school. They played on the basketball team together, and this one's like flailing her arms like, get up, like not making sound, but she's like doing this stuff. And then this is kind of confusing, but like she does this like motion like this, pushes her, and then all of a sudden Eilish is able to like stand up.
Wow.
And so here's the crazy shit.
I have chills.
Here's
right
the crazy
now.
shit. That girl was also stabbed by her ex-boyfriend.
And she
died.
And she didn't know until after?
No, she knew.
She knew.
But this was like a person that was like not a big part of her life at the time, which
Wow.
kind of struck me because I asked her that. I was like, are these the people that you would think about like in your final moments? She said no. Like this was a girl I knew in middle school.
That she was just on the basketball team with.
Yeah, and then the girl that committed suicide, she knew in college, and it was her good friend, but it was like, you know, these are not the people that like...
Yes. It's not your mom.
It did flash before her eyes also. There's something else happened. This was like... See, this is why I like doing the show, because I like to talk to unique people like this and get a glimpse of like, dude, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? So she said that this was before the three ghosts. She calls them the three ghosts. Before they showed up, this like almost like a screen appeared before her. And she's seeing like this slideshow, like rapid fire slideshow of her life. It's like little scenes from like a third person perspective of like her and her friends laughing, like all these like memories, people that she knows, like really fast, like almost like gifts or something, you know? And at the time she was like, what the fuck is happening? You know, and a little bit of like, oh shit, am I dying?
Yeah.
And then when her grandma showed up, she's like, oh no, I'm dying. Like Grandma Jeannie's here. But then when her friend Vicky showed up and like helped her stand up, then she found the phone, was able to call 911. And the crazy part is that like, you know, a lot of people would be like, oh, well, she passed out. She was dying. She passed out. And she's like, you know, she imagined this, right? Like,
that's a little too of a
well, I know. I mean,
specific-
so there's police body cam footage that I watched. And like, she is not out of it. Like, and by the way, this is like really, really difficult to watch. But like, I watched it like, I made it like this small on my screen.
Yeah.
But just like to you know, I kind of had to do it to verify. But like, she's very lucid, like wide awake. Like,
oh, when the police
when the police and
arrive.
EMTs show up, which is just only a few minutes later, and the doctors even told her that she didn't die. It's crazy. It's a crazy story. I don't even think I spoiled it too much, but that was like that was a landmark one for me that I spent like a ton of time on. And it's paranormal, but obviously it's like mostly not. But to me, it's kind of meta though, because it's like, it was almost like talking to a ghost.
Yeah.
Then I told her that. I was like, you don't get to hear, like, when people get killed, you don't get to talk to them.
Yes.
And it was so crazy talking to her. You ask her, like, I would ask her dumb stuff too. And like some of the weirdest shit sticks out to you.
Uh-huh.
Stuff that you think would be like easy questions, right? Where I was like, what was going through your head when you saw him? And she was like, I don't know. She's like, I think it was, oh shit. So like, I started laughing. I'm like, I guess you're right.
Yeah,
like, it's just, what else would you say?
Yeah.
Like, oh shit. You know?
That is, I guess that would be.
Right? And then like, she's just really funny. Like, she's fun. She's a school teacher. She's like the nicest person ever. But now like hearing about like what's annoying to her now too, like the true crime stuff, of course.
And people telling her story in whatever way they feel is sufficient or going to get listens, right?
Yeah. Just the way victims are talked about, I guess, and not given a voice. And then like all sorts of little things that are still like kind of amusing to me. And not amusing, but like one thing she pointed out was she's like, you have no idea how much violent language is like in day-to-day conversations. For instance, like, oh, I'll take a stab. Let me take a stab at it.
Yeah.
People saying shit like that.
Which is now triggering to her, obviously.
Yeah,
But
where
you
at
wouldn't
least it's like she notices it, you know?
Yes.
Like, let's cut through all the nonsense. Like, so many things are like...
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And then she has a bunch of scars. I mean, she's still like dealing with like the recovery from like, yeah. And so she has all these scars and like, I mean, I'm personally amused by this because she's like the sweetest girl in the world. But like she told me that sometimes, you know, when like gas station attendants or like guys working at a store, like some old guy will just like say some like stupid joke to you. And you're just like, like,
yeah, sure. Yes.
Like, so, you know, people are always like asking about the scars, which is
so inappropriate.
Yeah. And like,
people just, yeah.
But like I asked her, I was like, do you ever let people just have it? And she'll be like, oh yeah, like occasionally, like on a bad day.
And tell them what happened?
Yeah. Or they'll be like, you should, what did she tell me? She was like, people always say to me like, oh, you should make up some crazy story about how you got the scars. And she'll be like, oh, like I got stabbed 16 times. And they'll be like, what? I'd be like, because that's how I got them. And then like, oh. Well,
what a fucking G. They're probably like, have nothing to say at that point.
So it was that one. I know we just kind of talked about that for a while, but that one was like super meaningful to me. That was also like one of those that I spent so much time on.
I mean, you just gave me like a little soundbite of it, and I will be rushing home to go. It's
a crazy story, and it's a little graphic. Like I will say that. One episode is like literally just the attack, in great detail. But I interviewed her for 20 hours, I think, total.
Yeah.
And I just I edited it myself in my backyard, like getting stung by mosquitoes. Like,
why? Because you didn't want to be inside?
No, because I was inside too much, and I'm like, I need sun. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm stuck in my house. I need to at least go in the backyard. So I was like, I spent so much time making it, and
then having to listen back and do the editing, which that would, again, you have to like go through it, would be difficult as well.
Yeah, I've got used to it, but it was mostly like I really, really wanted it to be perfect, because also like we're friends and she trusts me, so I'm like, that's a whole other thing. But it's one thing like making a funny podcast where you're like, oh, I hope people laugh. This is a whole different thing where it's like, I hope I do her story honor. Like,
yes, do her story.
Or like
honor?
Imagine somebody like that getting mad at you. It was like so stressful, like making this show where it's like, dude, I don't want to disappoint her, but she was happy with it. Like, I think it went well. And
I mean,
there was like, ironically enough, there was some like tabloid articles that came from it a couple months later, because the show was like teacher says she sees ghosts after getting stabbed. Like, and she got mad about that, but then she laughed it off, and eventually I sent her a mug with the cover of the tabloid on it. And because it is pretty,
teacher saw,
because they always use weird pictures. Like, that's another thing. She's like, they'll use pictures from my Facebook from like 9 years ago that have not like, so the stabbing and seeing ghosts one had like, it's a picture of her from like the Renaissance fair, and she's dressed like a maid. They don't say it in the article. It just makes, they're just using this.
Just to make it look a little more quirky or ominous than
But anyway, so that was a crazy one. I'm sorry to make it so heavy.
No, I know. I mean, that's why I brought you on, because I have actually,
I want to hear your stuff. They're already probably mad at me. The sleuts, is that what you call them?
Yes, my sleuths.
I was listening.
No, they're gonna absolutely
You think so? Okay,
yes,
I was like,
yes.
I remember I listened on the way here, and I'm like, Jack, you can't talk the whole time. The sleuts are gonna be mad at you.
No, I mean, that is what you're here for, and that story, I don't even want to call it fascinating, because I want to be respectful. See, I don't even know how to respond to it in a respectful way, so I can't imagine telling the story. I would be like, is this okay to say?
Okay, wait. I'll tell you one more thing.
Okay,
You're gonna like this. You're gonna like this. So here's the craziest shit. His family does not acknowledge
that it happens.
I don't want to spoil things.
I mean, you're not spoiling it. Everyone needs to run and go listen to the Otherworld podcast and listen to this episode. I know I do.
So he is okay. If you don't want a spoiler, you could like skip this part.
Okay. Spoiler alert.
So he's not alive anymore.
Okay.
I'll just say that he committed suicide.
I was gonna say.
Part of the story is that she predicts, like, the police come in, they're like, where do you think he went? And she's like, I think he went to this rock. And like, they're like, why do you think that? They're like, she's like, I don't know, I feel like he did. And like, that's where they found him. But anyway, so like,
wow,
that's crazy. Like, she predicts things now after coming close to death. It's weird.
But she didn't know him well enough to know that he would be going to this rock.
No, like, the rock was not significant.
Wow.
But that was not even the thing I was going to tell you. The weird thing is that so it was a murder-suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
His family has never reached out to her, and they regularly do these like marches for suicide and post about it on Facebook and post about his suicide on Facebook, like a victim of suicide. Do not acknowledge that it was a murder-suicide, and one of them even went on the news. I was trying.
Alarming.
I had this clip edited that I was going to put in, pretty sure I didn't put it in. I don't think I put it in.
Yeah.
But I was like going to put it in of like one of his relatives like speaking on the fucking news about how he was like this angel and like, oh, he's so missed. He is this angel. Everything he touched, she said a couple things that were like a little ironic, you know, where it was like he had such an impact on so many people. I was like, oh, he had an impact.
Yeah.
And has never reached out to her in any way. Are
they in denial? Do they not believe? Like, what do you think's going on there?
They just say that it was mental illness. A lot of people have mental illness. It doesn't mean you get to murder people.
Right. And you can't just not acknowledge that portion of it.
Yeah, or at least be like, I'm so sorry. Or like,
so they've never spoken to her.
Yeah, and they're like, meanwhile, like publicly doing suicide awareness posts in like a happy fashion that's like,
and referring to him as an angel, and
it's weird. And so like, I just bring that up to say that like, there are so many things you don't think about, and even just like having gone through that, and then like just the weirdness of life after, where it's like, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and she has to deal with it in like a public thing, which is just the worst shit ever.
Yeah, it's interesting. So those episodes, like I kind of just gave her the room to talk about all the weird little details of things. So it's really interesting. Spoilers are over. So.
Spoilers are over. I feel like there's.
But I thought you would appreciate that.
I do.
Because that was juicy.
I do.
I don't think I put it on the show.
Okay.
I think that little clip. Yeah, I didn't put it on the show. I was like,
maybe we'll throw it in here.
I kind of felt bad, like not bad, but I had pity. I was like, you know what? These people,
the family's gone through.
They're going through it in their own way, and not in a good way, but I don't need to do that. Whatever.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's fucked up. Maybe they'll come around to it. I can't.
The clip was brutal. I didn't put the clip in.
So did he jump from the rock?
Back to spoilers.
Back to spoilers.
Well, I'll tell you that after the show.
Okay.
I'll answer all your questions. I'm sure you have a million.
Tell me after.
Wait, I want to hear more about you though.
So
you have stories. I was listening to the Waka Flocka episode, and
did I talk about a supernatural experience on there?
No, but my dad
ghosted me. That was kind of a good one.
Okay.
That came out of nowhere.
No, that's a good line. Whenever people like don't respond to me for the show or ignoring me, I'll send them a text, be like, damn, this is the real ghost story.
No, the reason I say that is because I feel like for the majority of the episode of Waka Flocka, I was like talking about like my daddy issues because my dad did ghost me, but that's not the ghost story. You didn't
talk about it that much, but you guys were saying things where I was like, I feel like they're both accidentally revealing some stress in their life.
Right? It was like, we didn't like specifically
You sounded like you wanted to quit your podcast.
Did I?
Yes.
That was not what I meant, Sloots. Absolutely not.
No, I'm just kidding.
Wait.
But you were saying something like it was clearly must have been a long day or something like doing this type of thing does take its toll. Or
really? Well, now after talking to you, I'm like,
Flocka sounded cool.
He is
sweet, kind of like a sweet nerd,
intuitive, very smart, and like he was really, really cool. He was really dope.
I love that. It was fun to listen to.
He picked up on a lot of things that really no one ever has. But when I say I want to quit the podcast,
no, I'm just giving you crap.
No, I know. But now that you say that, I am doing the craziest segue of all time. The podcast is becoming an issue for me in my dating life now. Just by the way, I just want to point that out. Like something happened the other day.
What kind of issues?
I've been talking to this guy, and I told a 2-minute story about like a experience we had. Didn't use his name, nothing. It wasn't even something like rude about him at all. And he called me freaking out. If you really cared about this and like took this serious, you wouldn't feel comfortable talking about it publicly to everyone. And and then he said, you're using me for content for the show.
Bro, you're not that interesting.
You're no, exactly. If you were that interesting, I would have, either brought you on or talked about you for more than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But also, I don't use people for the show. That's what I'm saying. He's over there like
you're dating
jacking
a
off to
podcaster,
it.
dude. Yeah, 100%.
Please. He
loved it.
He did. He was eating that shit up, but
yeah, but that's funny. I mean, my old co-host, my old show, Brandon Wardell, used to like talk about his high school bullies and like his old grievances that he would like name drop them like first and last. I'll be like, on the show every time, I'd be like, sure, we want to use the government name? He's like, yeah, fuck them. They shouldn't have stolen my Pokemon cards or whatever. And every time there would be like, we would get some message from some like married dude that's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I love your show. I don't remember taking Brandon's Pokemon cards. Like, I'm so sorry. We thought it was a bull. It'd just be like
that.
Like some sad, it was like 20 years ago.
Right.
And the guy's like, I didn't even remember. I don't think I took his. I'm making up the Pokemon card thing, but it'd be like that type of grievance where
I love
so
that.
funny. It always finds the person.
Well, I love that your friend uses first and last name like let's fucking go.
I know, right? Put him on blast.
That is actually putting someone on blast.
But that's funny about the dating life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge thing. It was just like a sidebar, like something that I've been kind of thinking about. Like I talk about my life. So yeah, if you're part of my life, something, I might acknowledge something and talk about it.
What's hard is that it's your life when the content of your show is about your life has to be interesting to have something to talk about on the show.
Yes.
And like when we did 500 episodes of Yeah, But Still, and like near the end, I mean, Brandon was like a touring comedian. So he had stories, but like at the time I was like heading towards getting married, mostly just working and becoming not so interesting anymore, where I was like, I didn't have anything to talk about. So it's hard. You have to like mine your life for funny little stories.
Yeah. Which I was just thinking about the fact that I just told that story about him getting mad at me for talking about him on the show. And then you have like the ghost
podcast guy calling him a pussy. Well, he is. It sounds like it.
And I'm talking about him again.
Also, this guy's probably in his 40s too.
He's, you know what?
If I'm clocking you correctly, he's probably like a 42-year-old finance guy.
Late 30s, so close. Not a finance guy, but just whatever. He's, you know what? He's no longer. But I've had.
Was it a sensitive story?
No. It was nothing. And also, I feel like if I'm not giving first and last name and serious, it wasn't like an intimate moment. Thank you.
Pause.
Thank you.
Pause, bro. Why are you listening to Sofia with an F in the first place?
Which, by the way, is something I tell people. I'm like, if you could not listen to the show, that would be great. So
perfect. My wife does not listen to any of my shit. Yeah.
She doesn't listen.
No.
And that's why she's your wife. And that's why she's your wife, because she respected that.
Yeah.
And I love her for that. Because a lot of people out here don't fucking respect that rule. I am going to tell you about an experience I had.
Okay.
So, first of all, I do want to ask you, do you think it's dangerous to play with like a Ouija board, do a seance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You do. You think that's like, you don't need to open that door.
Why would you? I compare it to like, if somebody said to you, hey, bro, there's a guy with a gun in that parking garage. Don't go in there.
Okay.
Like, they're either lying to you or there really is a guy. Why bother going in there? Like, you're not going to go in there. It's a lose-lose.
Mm-hmm.
Either that guy, you find out that guy's lying, nothing to see.
Yep.
Or
right. So
you're in
saying
trouble. Why
either
would you
something
go?
Doesn't happen
Why?
Or something does happen that could end
It's not
very
gonna be good.
badly.
It's not going to be good.
Okay. I was always the bitch, by the way. Now I don't. But growing up, I would go to the store in Utah that was downtown that had witchcraft things and spell books. And I liked to do that
There's
kind
nothing
of
wrong
thing.
with that. Yeah.
I never did like a full seance. I wanted to get a Ouija board, but I would Google it online and they were like, you can get it at Toys R Us. And I'm like, if I'm going to buy a Ouija board, it needs to be from a thrift store, 100 years old, behind a cobweb that I wasn't supposed to see. But like, I was into that. So I did want to ask you that question, but I've never really gone through with it. My experience was, I'm going to say 8 years ago. I think I know what it might be, but
Okay.
it doesn't matter. So I was at my mom's house. I had fallen asleep and I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw this figure in the corner of the room.
Okay.
That was it wasn't that it was frightening, although it was terrifying. It was such an evil presence.
Dread.
That is the exact word I would use to describe it. Just complete dread came over me. And I couldn't move for like a couple minutes. I finally snapped out of it. I turned all the lights on. I was way too scared to go back to bed. Finally, I went back to sleep with the lights on. Woke up again. This time, this figure is on top of my body. And I feel, and I sound so silly telling this.
You're not silly at all. This is extremely common.
What he looked like, there weren't really details that I can remember, just very scary and evil, and it was mostly in the face. I don't know, like really like long, sharp teeth, I want to say, but I could just like, my memory is telling me that maybe I thought that, but he was over my body and I felt the presence of that evilness like consume me. Like it was like inside of me. And then I was like, oh shit, am I evil now? Like what's happening? And it took me a few minutes and then I woke up. I was not the same for like 3 or 4 days. Like I was fucking
terrifying.
So scared. I couldn't sleep forever, blah, 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 blah. Since then, I've had something similar, but no way on that same level or scale happen. Is that sleep paralysis?
Okay, so yeah, they would say that that's sleep paralysis. You couldn't move, right?
I could not move. No.
Okay, so I'll try to give a short. First, wait, what did it look like?
It's hard to remember. It was just like a horrible, evil. It was dark. It was like a black figure, but there weren't really details from what I can remember. I think it had wings. Actually, to be honest, I think it had wings, and I'm not joking.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do remember something like that.
So here's like, I'll walk you through like my, like the Otherworld thought process on this stuff, right?
Okay.
So sleep paralysis. That was one thing that like when I started the show, I was like eliminating everything, right? Because it's like, oh, this is it's a thing, right? We know what it is. It's when your brain wakes up while your body is still asleep, right?
Yeah.
And it's very terrifying. You can't move. And they've been researching it, trying to figure out what exactly the cause is, especially why you end up seeing things.
That's the part that is weird to me because it's so evil.
Yeah, because not to do a tangent, but I used to have insomnia and ended up having what's called hypnopompic hallucinations, which is like your brain's so fucked up that like you wake up and for like a minute or a while, like you're walking around, you are seeing shit that's not there. Like for me, I saw the house on fire. I would like fight the fire, and then finally like, and by the way, this is past the point of being like, I'm imagining this, like you do the test, you're like awake.
Damn, you're in it.
So that was trippy for me, right? And then sleep paralysis, it's adjacent. I know that the brain can do weird things. So I wrote that off. People email me all the time about that, but I would just be like, oh, look, that's scary, but it's sleep paralysis. We don't really, it's explainable. But as time went on and I like started learning more about this stuff, like we still don't even know what really causes it, right? And even if it is something that we can't explain, it has happened. It does coincide so much with like other paranormal experiences that I've encountered that I've wondered myself like, oh, is this just a medical phenomena that's explainable that's also caused when something is happening, when something paranormal is happening, right? Like but we still don't really know what exactly it is, and we don't know why people see those things. There's a lot of theories, right? One of them that's really interesting and I don't know if this is going to be proven true because just based on like me hearing hundreds of stories about this, like I don't know. But one idea is that like the part of your brain that's being activated is the part that controls your ego. So they think that you're seeing yourself. Maybe.
No, I like that.
They did some studies where they would like, I could be wrong on this. I remember reading a study where they are testing amputees. Somebody like, for instance, doesn't have an arm, and trying to see if like they would see a shadow figure that doesn't have an arm. And I can't remember the results of that, but they're still trying to figure this out. And what I found is that like I've become more open to it because it's like the classic like horseshoe theory, you know, where it's like, or not horseshoe theory. Have you seen that meme where it's like a chart where it's like a dumb guy, and then like it's like an IQ chart where it's like a dumb person, like genius, and then like the middle ground, you know? Okay. Where like the smart person and the dumb person actually like agrees, but for different reasons. That's kind of how the paranormal is. I feel like the most like medium brain people are the ones that like write it off. Yeah. Because when you actually talk to somebody that is very far into their scientific field, they usually believe crazy stuff. Yes. It's just like on their own terms, right? Like they're really open because they know that we don't know. Right. Same with sleep paralysis. Like with my show now, I'll put in all this work to research and stuff, and then it's just funny. You encounter somebody that clearly thinks they're dumb or clearly thinks they're smart. It's usually a guy. They're just like, oh,
shocking.
That's just their subconscious manifesting their fears. What's that?
I'm sorry. Are you able to prove that?
Have you figured out what consciousness is? One of the great mysteries of our time that people dedicate their lives to and are continuously coming up with like very wild theories on, especially as like we're developing AI. It's like, what is the subconscious? Yeah. What does that mean? You don't know what that is? Explain it to me.
I don't like anyone that can say something for matter of factly. That always makes me not really believe someone if they speak that way. Yeah. I'm always keep it open-ended.
Yeah, I don't like to jump to either conclusions on my show, like where it's like, that was a demon, like, like, I don't jump to that. I don't jump to like, there's always an explanation, because we don't know. Like that's the thing. And a lot of the times, like, people throw the most random shit to explain this stuff away, like so automatically. It's like,
well, yeah, I mean, I kind of did that, right? I mean, I went down a rabbit hole of researching, and like that was kind of the best thing I could come up with. Was the sleep paralysis answer. And let me just tell you, this is in my mom's house that my nanny growing up used to tell me was haunted all the time. Also was built on an Indian burial ground in Utah. Just throwing that out there. Is that related? I have no idea. Maybe not, maybe so, who knows? But it was the evilness and the dread and the terror that came with it that just has always stuck with me.
Yeah. So part of me, like, the way I look at sleep paralysis is that, like, it can just happen to you for no reason at all, right? Like, but I do, like, if you're asking me what I think in my gut based on, like, making the show, it could be a symptom, a non-paranormal symptom that could happen during paranormal situations. Does that make sense?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Where it's like, because, I mean, I've done some, like, deep... like there's a reason why I've like kind of come out the other side with this, because like there's a few things that people see in sleep paralysis. One of them is this thing called the night hag, or like the old hag. It's this woman, right? And like I have this episode, I think it's called the night hag, I think, but it's this kid, or he's a man now, but like when he was a kid, he would like be terrorized by this thing for 8 hours at a time, and she would try to like break into his chest. And so I knew that there was like a lot of folklore around this thing, but me and my friend Joshua Citarella, shout out to Josh, he's like one of the best researchers I know and a really interesting artist and all sorts of things. Anyway, a very smart man. We both dove into like essentially studies, scholarly papers on this folklore, and we started to find that like almost every single culture around the world has some version of this woman that people see. In fact, it goes back so far that the word nightmare actually refers to this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the mare. That was like the old Germanic version of it. And it's like this demonic woman that like appears at night where you're paralyzed. This relates to sleep paralysis, right? So if it was that and it's always the same things. So for me, even with like my scientific brain on or like anthropological brain, if you're one of those people that's like, oh, it's just your fears manifesting itself. Okay. Why would the fear be exactly the same over centuries and even appearing in completely isolated tribes?
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next fucked up point is that there's this group called the Hmong people that were kind of like roped into Vietnam by the United States to fight for us. And like, you know, we were roping everybody in.
Yeah.
And they were not treated very well. We, of course, lost that war. So
Yeah.
anybody that was living there, things were not going well for them after. And we allowed a lot of them to escape and to seek refuge in the United States. And when the Hmong people came here, a lot of them started dying suddenly in their sleep. And I'm not making this up. You could like look this up. Okay, so they started to die suddenly in their sleep. And when, you know, the government, because they were helping the United States and they were our refugees, like we actually threw a lot of resources at this because it's like, why are they dying?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because we used Agent Orange or whatever? Like, I think that's probably why they're so concerned. But they went and investigated, and they're interviewing people, and every time they would speak to family members or even people who survived these sudden unexplained deaths, they would say it was this entity called Da Cho. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, guys. And they explained it's this vengeful entity that targets the head of the household. And when they're living in, in Southeast Asia, because this group lives all over the place, not just in Vietnam. So when they were living there, they were able to practice their traditional religion, and it's a lot harder to do that in America. Not only that, they were joining churches just to like fit in. So they weren't doing their normal practices to like prevent Da Cho from coming, and now they're left vulnerable. And over 100 people died in their sleep from this.
Holy shit.
It was this woman that would come and get them at night. And like, I know this sounds crazy. This actually inspired some movies in the 80s. Very like, I think Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by this, but they still haven't figured it out. Like they're still investigating it, and like, they didn't have heart attacks. They named it sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome. And like they're still trying to figure it out. There's theories, but like even from a scientific perspective, like if you're a person that like believes in evolution and stuff, it's like, what would be the evolutionary benefit of dying by imagining something?
Right.
Like you can imagine something in your head that's so scary that you die. Doesn't make any sense. That was when like me and Josh, when we were like diving into that, I was like, this is crazy. Like
I want to look into it. It's the Hmong people.
Yeah, I'll send you all this stuff.
Okay, please.
And so like we're reading like academic papers on this,
right?
Like, that we had to pay money to access. Like,
right.
Like this is not like we're not on like 4chan looking at this stuff. Like these are we're citing like scholarly,
peer reviewed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so like I'm not saying that the night hag is this like necessarily this like being, but the point is like you can't just like write things off so easily and be like, oh, they're imagining it. It's like, this is more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just get to toss some dumbass explanation at things, right?
Yes.
And people do all the time and minimize it. I think like I legitimately do hope we figure out what some of this stuff is, but we're not going to if we just keep ignoring it,
we just
right?
keep writing it off.
Yeah, and I think people talk about things everybody assumes there's a smarter guy, right? There's like this imaginary smarter guy or girl, right? Like there's people figuring this stuff out. Like,
yes.
There's not.
There's an explanation for that somewhere.
There's not a guy.
there's not.
There's often not. Or if you talk to that person, they're like, man, it's kind of crazy. I don't know. Like, huh? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they'll give you the official answer, but then when the mic turns off, they'll be like, a lot of those people are weird too. Like,
yeah.
Like when you really talk to people that are like far into their field of like studying consciousness, like neurosurgery, stuff like that, they'll give you the doctor answer, but then when the mic turns off, like they'll get weird with you.
Right. Like they'll be like, but like just man to man, not on the record. Like, I don't know how to explain XYZ.
There's a lot of stuff that like we just don't know yet, and maybe we will figure it out, and it'll be a really boring answer, something that we could replicate, right?
I feel like there can't be.
Maybe we will,
but I don't talk
I think,
matter of fact, so maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but for me, that's the funny thing from doing this show is like seeing the stupid shit. Like I saw somebody like tag me in some shit today about like a 5-part series I did where like multiple people are seeing like lamps like fly and like, you know, and somebody tagged me in some post being like, this is very obviously a carbon monoxide leak. Like people should like, and it's like, one, the family owns a fucking construction company and like builds houses. Like they have carbon monoxide detectors. That was the first thing they checked. Secondly, like carbon monoxide leaks don't make chairs fly across the fucking around. Right. You know, like, what are you talking about? And in fact, like I recently talked to a couple people who have had carbon monoxide poisoning about their symptoms, and it's definitely weird, but it does not explain all of the things that people use to explain it. Same with like black mold. People are always like black mold. Yeah. Where's the evidence that black mold does any of this stuff to you? The jury's still out on a lot of that. Like people, it can make you sick for sure. Yes. It's not going to make you think your wife is floating. Right. Or like, right. Or like, it's not going to make stuff like break, burst into flames. Like that's just, you know. Yes. Infrasound, I've heard that, like really low wave frequencies that might be doing something to the brain. That actually, I'm kind of interested in that, but like, if that's true, let's replicate it because I want to try. Like, make me see a ghost with sound. Let's go. I would love, if anybody can do that and replicate it, like, let's go. Hit me up because like we could make a fucking killing around Halloween. Yeah. And I'll let you in on this too. Like, please do. Same with, you know, all of these things where people are like, oh, it's obviously this. Let's replicate it, right? Because like, if we could put headphones on a person and make them see a ghost, like, let's do it. Let's make a lot of money. Right. But we don't know yet. So
what do you think about like those various machines that they'll use on shows that can like pick up frequencies or
mixed feelings? It's like with like, you're talking about the spirit boxes where it like rotates through channels, you know? Or like EMF.
You know what? I don't know enough about it. I just feel like they go in and they're like, it can pick up sounds or like voices that we couldn't hear.
That is interesting. I mean, I've had people send me stuff that they've picked up like some interesting recordings, but like if we were talking about like what I actually think about all of this, like my full-on galaxy brain take is that I think a lot of this is part of our consciousness that we don't quite fully understand, or maybe it's evolving a bit. Like maybe these are things that we could perceive, like an extrasensory perception. Okay. Whatever this stuff is, even if it's just momentarily happening and we can momentarily perceive it. Therefore, you might not be able to pick that up on a camera, right?
That's a really interesting take. Isn't it? I'm gonna fuck up this so bad. We only use 20% of our brains. I made up the 20%.
Something like that. I'm certainly no scientist, but you know, I mean, our eyes don't see in 3D. Yeah. That's like our brain translates it into 3-dimensional. Right. And same with sound. Like your brain has to like learn to use its senses. It's ultimately just detecting vibrations, like waves, light waves, sound waves, and like a small fraction of it. Animals can see a lot of different things that we can't. So yeah, part of me thinks like maybe we're briefly detecting something and our brain's confused, right? When they get like implants, deaf people, when they get implants that allows them to hear, it's really bad at first. It's like static, but then their brain learns to use it. Okay. And it eventually gets like pretty good. So if you did have like some part of your brain you could perceive something else, if it like turned on briefly, it would be really bad and horrifying and confusing. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of like my galaxy brain version of it.
I think all of this is so fascinating. And I think your show is, I can't even get over. Like the couple things you told me, I'm so excited.
I didn't even get to tell you the things I was planning on telling you here. There's some funny ones, but.
Okay, well, we'll have to do a part 2. I mean, do you have a quick funny one? Like a ghost stealing a because I misplaced my more than anything, and I swear to God, there has to be. I don't think it's me every time.
The ghost stuff I've heard with that is not losing, but actually bringing stuff back. Like people will that live alone. I've heard instances of somebody there'll be things that misplaced, and then all of a sudden it's folded. Like the shit's folded.
Okay, well that's fucking creepy. Like my vape is all of a sudden charging.
Okay, one funny story. I got this email really early on, and it was this guy, and it said, I was sexually assaulted by a jinn, which is like a Muslim malevolent spirit or spirit. I don't know if everybody thinks they're malevolent, but and then the email was it jerked me off until my penis hurt. I'm not lying. And then it was signed Kareem, and I was like, that's all right, annoying. I was like, okay, bro, funny, delete, moved on with my life. Anyway, I'm 4 months later, I'm at some dinner with a bunch of media people in LA. And I'm late. I'm sit next, I arrived late, they're already eating. Sit next to this guy, start chatting. I don't know anybody. And we're becoming buds and getting to know each other. And then we're near the tail end of things. We're gonna get the check almost. And he turns to me and he's like, by the way, you never responded to my email.
Oh,
and I was like, what? And he's like, I'm Kareem. And I was like, you're Kareem? And I'm like, were you joking? And he's like, no. And he's really serious. And by the way, this guy's an actor. And he hosts people might know who he is. His name's Kareem Rama, I think.
Okay.
And hosts a show called I'm blanking because I'm laughing about this story right now. But he hosts Subway Takes. You know the show Subway Takes?
No.
Okay, well, he interviews people on the New York subway. It's very popular. Mm-hmm. The other one's Keep the Meter Running, where he interviews cab drivers. He's a very funny, famous guy.
Okay.
And
he was not fucking around.
Not fucking around, and he ends up telling me this story that people say is the scariest episode. To me, it's still kind of funny because I'm still in shock, and he's sitting there telling me this about that this entity
did he
jerked
come?
him up. I don't know if I can't remember, but I asked him.
That's a very, we need to know that
so it was
detail.
always a little funny to me, but it's really not funny. And it's the one where people are always tell me oh, I had to turn it off. But
okay, so what's that episode called?
Kareem and the Jinn.
Kareem and the Jinn.
But it was so funny because it was just
you wrote it
so shocking to meet this person at this dinner full of tech reporters and fucking yeah.
And you were I thought you were joking. He's no.
I thought it was somebody pranking me. And then he ends up telling me the scariest story about this saga in his life that is horrifying and still scares him. And now he's this comedian and very funny dude.
Okay. Fuck.
That was funny. Kareem. I witnessed an exorcism in Erewhon.
I'm sorry.
Or something,
That is a
want to hear it?
An exorcism in Erewhon.
Something. It was a weird moment in my life.
You witnessed it yourself. Okay, well, we need to run and go listen to your show, Otherworld, where you can find anywhere you can find podcasts.
Yep. The Instagram is at Otherworld Pod.
And then your Instagram. My
Instagram is at Versace _Tamagotchi.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting.
I might change. That was a boy's Instagram handle. I might.
I know. I saw that, and
Alex?
I was like,
should I change it?
No. I mean, it's iconic. I think now it needs to stay.
People would be mad.
Yeah, people would absolutely be mad if you changed it. But this was fascinating. I want to do a part 2. I would like to end it on a note that I did see a bat outside my window. I live on the 60th floor of my apartment building last night.
That's spooky. That's classic. That's classic spooky.
How pissed would you be if I wrote that into your show?
That would be sick. I always because I still am a goofball, so I always think of dumb ideas. I I always think about doing an episode where it's people getting scared by like classic Halloween stuff. Like I saw a pumpkin floating down the street.
Right.
I saw a skeleton.
Also, a bat is, I think a bat we can say is a living, breathing animal that has been proven.
They're spooky.
They're spooky, but
Oh yeah, you didn't know that bats were real? Could you believe it?
Imagine that was my story I came with. I swear
I did not think I would ever... Yeah,
I know it was not a bird in a costume. I know for a fact. And you guys know where to find me. Sofia with an F, Franklin with a Y. I'll talk to you Sloots next week. Jack, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
This was so much fun. I could have talked to you for hours. Thanks, Sloots. Bye.
See you guys.